You can always end run it. But I think the research would suggest that when the federal assault weapons ban was in place in the 90s for a decade and then expired, I think the evidence would suggest that it worked. But I do recognize there are some challenges to it. I actually, before the assault weapons ban, if I were listing mine, I put limitation on magazine size as the preferential one. I'll tell you why. In Virginia, you hunt a deer, you can have 3 in your chamber and magazine, because it wouldn't be fair to the deer to have more than 3. I mean, and actually, you can hunt with a larger magazine, but you have to put a plug in the magazine to reduce its size to 3 rounds. And so, unlike the assault weapons ban, where it's hard to define and then you can end run it, if you have a magazine requirement, that's actually a little bit more, it's easy to enforce. But the universal background checks is number 1, it's the most popular. And then the assault weapons ban popularity reduces. And some of it's for the reasons you suggest. It can be hard to define. But if we could agree on universal background checks, we could really, really make our communities a whole lot safer. So.
Home magazine point really quick. My friend Pat Maish, so she was in the Gabby Giffords shooting, and she was able to disarm the gunman because when 2 people were trying to take the gun away from him, he was in the middle of reloading. So she was then able to rip the magazine clip out. And so that was how they were able to put an end to that incident. So if you don't have as many bullets available, I think you reduce the number of casualties. You also create a time frame where people could actually take action. So if you only have 6 bullets available, it's 6 bullets, they go through, then you can take action as opposed to 120. I think there's a significant difference there.
So the question is now, where do we go from here? And I appreciate everybody being here this afternoon. Our panelists provided some wonderful expertise and personal stories. Just to let you know, the General Assembly is committed to looking at this issue. The House Democratic Caucus has started a Safe Virginia initiative that will look at gun violence in all of its forms that we talked about here today. And I'm honored and privileged to be the chair of the Southwest region. So we will be having more of these kind of events under the auspices of the House Democratic Caucus in the New River Valley, across Southwest Virginia in the future. And certainly Senator Kaine will be talking about this as he is facing re-election. So I thank all of you for being here this afternoon, and I would like to give the last couple of minutes over to Senator Kaine for any closing thoughts.
Can I hand the last 2 to Uma and Harley?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's I'm just play quick devil's advocate here. So I have a question. Mine would be, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they consider the NBP, the new Black Panther Party, a terrorist group. But to my knowledge, they've never once fired a gun. They've never once harmed anyone, put ones at harm's way. They're strapped with AR-15s, AK-47s, but they also carry that with them as what they would say is a way of defense. So if they're law-abiding and they're a terrorist group, it's like we live in a society where black sisters and brothers are seen as criminal, and brown sisters and brothers are seen as illegal and savage, and gay folks, queer, are seen as immoral. And so it's like when you see a black man with a gun, we think, oh well, he's going to hurt someone. But there aren't any statistics that are saying the MVP is going out and they're targeting white people. So I guess not to rush too fast, my question would be, when there's a group who organizes outside of something they see that's going on, and it's not to say that I do believe that guns don't make us safer, they propagate fear. I truly believe that, and I'm probably never going to own one. But I do worry about, what about other groups that organized for calls, how would you respond to the NBP? Or maybe not how you would respond to them, but since they've never harmed anyone to my knowledge. So.
How about Mississippi?
Yeah, of course.
So this actually does not really relate to Harley's question, but I just wanted to say, first of all, once again, thank you guys so much for being here, because we can't have these kinds of discussions without our community. And I mean, it's very clear that we have an epidemic of gun violence in our country. I think everything starts off small and it grows bigger and bigger. And now we have a generation that's coming up that's experienced gun violence from a very young age. And I think Parkland is really the first wave of kids that's going to show us that, where they've had to experience active shooter drills in their schools, right? I saw a picture the other day of a 3-year-old, her mom took this picture. This 3-year-old was standing on a toilet, and the mom asked her, "Why are you standing on the toilet?" And she says, "I'm practicing my active shooter drill in case somebody comes to shoot me." So very clearly, we have a problem that's grown out of proportion. And so it's good for us to come together because, you know, we can talk about Congress and what are they going to do, right? And we often say America's a democracy, but we're really a republic. And everything in the government, I think, starts from the community, and it starts from us. And when we tell our representatives that this is what we want to see, this is the information that we're getting, this is what we're seeing, this is what we're experiencing, now what are you going to do? And then it's up to them to respond, right? And if they don't respond in a way that keeps us safe, then we need to think about finding other representatives who will do the job. And so that also means supporting, I think, our representatives who will do the job. And that means that when their campaigns come around, you know, guys, go out, door knock, phone bank, do all the things. But I guess I also have a question for you, if you don't mind. We're in an era right now where we're seeing a lot of disinformation, misinformation. Like the lady in the audience mentioned, we've got like a lot of propaganda being run around. And I'm curious about what we do to combat that, especially since it's really floating around. It's tied into everything, I think. I don't think you make true progress unless you have facts on the table. And when you have a misinformation / disinformation campaign that's running strongly, how do you go about combating that?
Now, we really need some research on this one. Well, I'll say to Harley and then to Uma's question. So, Harley, I don't know enough about the NBP or the Southern Poverty Law Center's designation, but look, whatever the laws are, people are entitled to have weapons, and they're entitled to have weapons. And if they're not using them to do things that are violent, then they're entitled, and we shouldn't label them bad just because they have weapons. I'm a weapon owner too, and I'm a Second Amendment supporter. I believe in reasonable rules. The last thing I want to do is say, you know, here's the laws, you can have them, but oh, if this group is doing it, they're people of color, you know, we should think differently about it. In fact, there's sort of a sarcastic thing that goes around that says, you know, the NRA will change their position and agree with regulation of firearms as soon as more minorities start to open carry. You know, that's sort of a kind of a sick joke that goes around, but these issues do wrap up together with race and stereotype, and do we see a person and think that person's mentally ill, or if we hear about an incident, do we assume the incident must be this person or that person? We have a lot of stereotypes that we have to, throughout our lives, shed ourselves of. The disinformation, I wish I had a good answer on this. This is tough. My wife Ann is here, so I'll tell a funny story on both of us. When I was on the ticket with Hillary, there would be false stories about me. And one day, a story, my staff said, "Hey, yeah, this story's going around that you're caught on tape yelling at your mistress." And I'm like, "What?" And then they were laughing. Oh, isn't this funny? I said, "Well, what do you mean?" So we get on. There's a story that's floating around. It's not in mainstream media, but it's in everybody's inboxes and all. And it was a tape of Mel Gibson yelling at his mistress like 15 years ago. That was kind of a scandal then, but people had forgotten about it. I told somebody about this. It wasn't me, it was Mel Gibson. Well, why would Mel Gibson yell at your mistress? So, we just thought, oh, this is funny, this is comical, nobody would believe it. But for some reason, I was kind of interested in it, and so I just dug a little bit further, and like the thing had been viewed like 8 million times. This story about Tim Kaine, and here's the tape, and this is an awful guy if he's going to treat somebody like this. So this is a reality of life now. And I don't know how in a First Amendment culture completely we put this one back in the bottle. I don't know how we stop an anonymous somebody who might be working out of an office in Romania or the Ukraine from coming up with some fake story and planting and trying to get it go viral. This is a very, very difficult question. I do know that ultimately the guarantor of it is skeptical citizenry. So, the whole reason the First Amendment protection of free press was not put in primarily, we need to protect those journalists. It was put in because the framers understood that a robust free press could puncture falsehood. Now, sometimes it can spread falsehood. But I think the experience of all the fake news and the fake stories and stuff motivated by foreign adversaries and others in 2016 will start to increase our skepticism, puts more of a burden on the shoulders of educational institutions, right? And from the very beginning to help people find good information and bad information. But it is a very hard question. And so this issue about they're coming to take your guns away, or that gets perpetrated out through social media and other accounts that are scurrilous, that are driven by somebody with an axe to grind or an agenda. But we have a robust First Amendment culture where people can say all kinds of things, even anonymous things from the very beginning. Common Sense by Todd Payne was issued anonymously. Federalist Papers issued anonymously. There's a whole tradition of anonymous speech being important. So this is a hard one to solve. Very hard one to solve. I'll just close, Chris, and say this is a community that matters a lot to me. I'm a Mizzou grad, forgive me for that, but when I moved to Virginia, I sort of got indoctrinated by Virginia Tech folks. But then my time as governor just forged a bond, and I will say that the pain of that day was also accompanied by a realization about the strength of community here that I really see, that I saw that and I still see, and that's powerful. So hold on to that.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you all very much for being here this afternoon. And make sure we continue this conversation in our other neighborhoods. Thank you all very much.